What's good, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be showing you a tool that's going to simplify your no-code development many times over. This is a super powerful tool, and I can't believe I just discovered it now because it's going to save me so much time. It's going to make the experience a lot better, and I can build truly powerful apps using some of the functionality from this tool. And the best part of it all is that this tool is 100% free and 100% open source. And so once I show you this tool, you're gonna start using it right away, and you're also gonna wonder how you were able to build all those apps and do your no-code development without ever using this tool. This is how useful and this is how powerful this tool is. Now in this video, we're going to have three parts. In the first part, I'm going to show you this tool, I'm going to show you what it does, and I'm going to kind of explain to you in simple terms some of the functionality and some of the usefulness of this tool when it comes to your own use cases. Following that, I'm going to give you two concrete uses that you can put this tool to use for your FlutterFlow apps or pretty much other no-code apps that you may be building right now. And of course, this tool has a lot more uses, but right now I want to kind of whet your appetite and show you some of the capabilities in order for you to go out and to build truly powerful and useful apps. Now, this tool is called Rowi. It's located at rowi.io, and here's the homepage. And this is what they say: connect your database and build cloud functions all in your browser. Forget CLIs, configs, and DevOps. Focus on building your apps. And if you scroll down, they have your database, your backend code, they kind of meet up, and you have a big explosion, okay? And they're saying it begins with your data. Rowi displays it directly in the familiar spreadsheet UI. All your data is accessible. And so here's a quick screenshot of the kind of data they're supporting, things like that. Now, Rowi has a wealth of features that you can do with data. For instance, you can run automations when data changes or external services push data. You can calculate the value, perform tasks, send your data to external services, receive data from webhooks. Lots and lots of interesting things. There's a couple of examples of various systems you can build with a tool such as Rowi. We have Google Vision, Figma file embedded, Webflow forms to Firestore, etc., etc. This tool is basically a spreadsheet on steroids, or if you think about it, it's kind of like Airtable, but maybe even more powerful than Airtable. You can think of it as Airtable on steroids, and it all connects to your Firebase, okay? And that's what kind of makes it very powerful. And so you can essentially have a UI interface to your Firebase. And remember, what is so special about Firebase? Well, Firebase is how we build our apps. And so if you have a really nice UI where you can manipulate data and work with this data, well, guess what? The apps that are relying on this data, the apps that are pulling this data, that are reading this data, that are writing this data, namely your FlutterFlow apps, they're going to be a lot more dynamic. They're going to be a lot more real-time, as you will see shortly. And so let's go ahead. Let's create a brand new project here in Rowi. And let's link that project to my existing Firestore DB, which is in turn linked to one of my FlutterFlow apps so that I can show you how all of this works. All right, so we're going to go up, we're going to sign in. I'm already signed in. I already created an account. And so here I am logged in. It's inside one of my workspaces here. And so the next thing you want to do is you want to create a project. We're just going to call it Project 1. We're going to select Firebase. I'm going to hit continue. And I'm already signed in into one of my accounts that's linked to Firebase. And so it wants me to select an existing project. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. Okay, so I'm just going to say Project 1 here. I'm going to pick a region and I'm going to say Create Project. All right, it's telling me that I've created the project. I can hit continue. And it wants us to enable Firebase services, okay? So it wants me to do a couple of things: open authentication, verify authentication, that authentication is enabled. Here's my new Firebase project. I'm going to create authentication here. I'm going to enable it. Okay, now it's telling me that authentication is now enabled. We can hit continue. All right, so now it's telling me nicely done. You've created a new project. We're going to close this and we're going to go to the project here. And so here I am inside my new project that I've created. And I see a couple of options. I have tables, members, settings, and things like that. And what I really want to do is I want to create a new table with data that's going to be visible in Firebase. So let's say I'm building a new app and it's going to be a consumer-facing app and I'm looking for a lot of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new table here and I'm going to call this, I don't know, like users1 or something like that. And so we have display, basically some information about this table here. We have access controls, we have columns, and then we have columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit create, and then I have the option of importing data or manually adding columns and rows. So I can do that, but I can also import data. And so that means I can go to a site such as Macaru, and there are tons and tons of sites, and I can create fake data and import it very, very quickly and easily. So let's go ahead and import a bunch of data here. So we have first name, last name, email, gender, IP address. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the site, this is an awesome site because it actually, you can set up a type for a specific field. So if you want like, you know, a bunch of fake emails, fake users, you have a field called email address and you have lots and lots of fields. I use the site all the time. So and let's say we want to create just 50 rows, CSV format, and we're going to say download data. All right, so now we have the data generated. We can go back to Rowi and say import that data. Okay, now we can drag and drop that CSV. We can just drag it here, continue, and right away detects the columns here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the columns that are in my CSV file, and it's going to create these new table columns. As you see, they're brand new, and I can change how they look. I can click here and I can change the name and all that, but we don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to say continue. And now it's asking me for column types, and it already kind of guessed some of the column types. So ID is short text. This is short text. This is email. Okay, email, gender, single select, IP address is short text. So you can change it if you want. So this is short text. You can put a number there, you can put something else, but let's say we go with the default. So I'm going to hit continue. This is the preview of the data. We have 50 columns that we created. I'm going to hit finish, and now it imported all 50 rows. And now we have a new table with 50 randomly generated users. And now you can go back in your Firebase project, you can go to the build, go to Fire Store database here, and you should see that collection there. So we see that collection right here, users. It has all of these documents and it has these document fields. So the collection is already ready for us. So we can build a FlutterFlow app using this collection very, very quickly and easily. So I can go back into my FlutterFlow here, create a new page, something that looks like a list maybe, something that maybe uses this theme here, and I can just say users, use my theme, and I have a list here. I can delete all this. Now I can configure my FlutterFlow app to use that Firebase by clicking here, entering the project ID. And so I have my FlutterFlow generated schema here for users. I can go back to the pages, I can go to users, and I can simply load it up here by doing a backend query. Okay, query collection, I can just say users1, list of documents, confirm, and now we can simply select something here. We want to use this friend name here as the username. I can just set it from a variable, and I can just maybe use their email or something like that. And now if you run that app, we should hopefully see this displayed with the data that we imported. And so here you have the sample page with the list view with the various emails that we populated from this page here. And all of them came from this table that we imported inside Rowi. And so this used to be a big hassle. This used to be a big pain because you had to go either create them manually or use some other method or do something else, while Rowi makes it super simple to go out and create the table exactly how you want it, import that data, and you can also export that data if you want. So if you are working inside of your app, you're making all kinds of changes and you need to back up this data, you can simply click on this, export, download, and it's going to go ahead and ask you what do you want at CSV. You're going to pick CSV. You can also pick JSON if you want, and you'll be able to export this data. So import export was a big pain point when you were building apps, and now that problem is forever solved. Now, another nice thing about this is that let's say you delete this table here. Okay, so we're going to go into tables. I'm going to pick users and I'm going to delete it. Okay, I'm going to delete the entire table. So it's telling me this will only delete the Rowi configuration data. You will not lose any data in your Firestore collection. So I'm going to hit delete. And so if I go back to my actual data, my actual Firestore project, I still have that users table, and I can go back and I can say, well, I want a new table and I want it to be based off users. I'm going to say create. And it went ahead and created this table. There are existing data in your Firestore, import existing data. We can select it, hit continue, just choose the defaults, finish. And now we have the data here. It basically duplicated that data. So not only do you have a way of creating this data and syncing it with Firestore, but you also have a way of syncing it back, basically starting from the data you already have and getting this data inside of Rowi, which is an amazing capability that's going to make your lives a lot easier. I promise you that. Now, before I show you the next important feature, I want to explain to you the kind of problem that it's trying to solve. And so if you take a look at this diagram, we have our FlutterFlow app, and we have the ability to interact with third-party services. These are the so-called APIs, application programming interfaces. And so this is very useful if you want to access data that you don't already have. Now, it would be also nice for us to send data asynchronously, meaning like in this case, we know that we want the data, and so we are connecting to APIs, third-party services. But in many situations, it's very nice for some third-party service or some third-party system to send data to us without us actually expecting the data. That's called asynchronous. This is synchronous because we know that we want this data and we're actually taking a conscious step of executing this API call to get this data. But in many cases, and I'm going to show you some very important use cases a little bit later in the video, stay tuned for that. In many cases, it's also great for the ability to send data asynchronously. So in this case, we have maybe some kind of an incoming request, and I can send that request, you can send that request, a system can send that request, maybe some kind of integration can do that, and we can take a specific action. And so if you take a look at this other diagram here, this is our regular app flow. We have the user, we have the UI screen, we have the logic, and we have the database. And typically, the way the data is changed in the database is because the user is interacting with the app. So maybe the user is working with like a currency conversion or like a Bitcoin wallet, and they're doing something, and this data is being changed. But it would be really nice and very useful and very powerful for an ability to send data in an ad hoc way, in an asynchronous way from the outside. And so we have the send new data, the ability to do it. And so with FlutterFlow and a lot of tools, you just can't do it. But if we are talking about like web apps, custom coded web apps, that's a fairly standard functionality. That is a fairly standard thing that you can do. And that happens all the time. It's not only you're accessing third-party APIs, but you have other services accessing your app. It's a very standard thing. And in FlutterFlow, it's very difficult to do. It's actually a challenge to do it. And thankfully, Rowi helps us a lot when it comes to this issue, and also enables us to build very sophisticated, very interesting apps that I'm going to be showing you some ideas a little bit later in the video. And so if we go back to Rowi, what we want to do is we want to create a new table, and this table is going to handle the data that we are going to be sending from another service, basically outside the app in asynchronous fashion. So I'm going to create a new table, and I'm just going to call it data, right? I'm going to create a new collection. I'm just going to say data. We have a couple of options. Columns, we can create columns. We don't know what the columns. We can create initial columns, maybe row ID and things like that. And for the permissions, I'm just going to say anyone can read, okay? We just want it to be available for testing. Anyone can read and get access to this data. So I'm going to say create. Okay, and now we have a new table here, okay? So if we open this up, we have users, our old table, and we also have data with one column called ID. The next thing you guys want to do is you want to come here to webhooks, okay? You're going to do that. Now, if you run this for the first time, you're going to need to set it up. Just click next, 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 and it's all going to set up automatically. Once you do that, you're going to see the screen. Now, what you want to do is you want to click on this magical button called Add Webhook, and we're going to choose Basic. And once you do that, you want to call it, I'm just going to call it Webhook 1. I'm going to enable it so that I don't forget it later. And we are given an endpoint URL, and this is very, very important because this is essentially a gateway URL somewhere on the internet that allows us from the outside to connect to our app and send it any data that we want. And then we can do whatever we want with that data. And so let me run through this real quick. You don't want any verification. We're just testing. You can leave this on default, and you can leave this on default as well. We're going to hit add. Now we have a webhook. It's enabled. We're going to say save and deploy. And now if you come back here, you have this webhook. So what you want to do is you want to copy this endpoint URL, and you want to try sending random data there so that you can work with this data. And for that, I'm going to use a tool called PAW. You can also use this tool as well, or you can go out on the internet, use a tool like Postman, or pretty much any other tool that sends REST data. I'm going to paste it here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send some data. And so here, we're going to create a JSON object. And so what I'm going to say, I'm just going to say text hello world. Okay, and that's it. Now, if we click on JSON, you're going to see that JSON format. You're going to see how it looks. Application JSON. This is JSON. And this is the request. It's a very, very simple request. This is the key and this is the value. The key is text and the text is hello world. That's it. And now we're going to run it. Okay, I'm going to press Command Enter, which is how it runs it, and we see OK. And that means that everything is fine. This is the full response. Everything is OK. Now, if we go back here, we have a new row that was just created. We did not have any rows before, but now we have a new row that was just created. And if we go to our Firestore DB, we come in here, and we have this data collection. I'm going to click on data. We're going to click on it. And guess what we see? We see that text that we were waiting for. It's a string. And what we just did is something very, very powerful. We basically sent some data from the outside into our FlutterFlow app. Well, actually, it's not inside FlutterFlow app just yet, but it's available because remember, Firestore DB is our source of truth for our FlutterFlow apps or pretty much any other app that you're building. And so here's our data. And so now, let's say I want to send more data. Well, I'm going to go back to PAW and I'm going to send something like data to, this is my second attempt. And I'm going to execute this. I'm going to go back and I have a new document. I click on it and I see this data. And this is very, very powerful, as you're going to see in just a second. Let's send another request. This is my third request to get noticed. Okay, send it right here. And now we have a third document right here, and this is the data. And so now I can go back to my FlutterFlow app and I can create a schema to mirror the data that we're sending. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new collection called data. And I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to add a field. And what is this field going to be? This field is called text because it's text here and it's also text here. This is the name of the field. So we're going to say text is a string and we're going to do that. Next, we're going to create a new page. I just created a basic list. We have a list view. We're going to go ahead and load up this list view with the data from our backend. I'm going to do data, confirm, come back here, and now we have a row. I'm going to add a text field, maybe make it a little bit bigger, maybe make it 22 so that we see it. Come back here, and I'm going to go data, document, and I want to display text. Okay, so now we have a list of that collection, basically a list of those documents inside of that collection. All right, so now let's run the app and let's see if it's displaying the data properly. And I'm also going to show you something special while we are running the app. We're going to create a new test environment. All right, so here's our app, and we are seeing the 3 requests that we sent. There's some overflow issues, and that's fixed very, very easily. Now let me show you something interesting. If I go back into my poll, and let's say I send another request, my fourth request, and I run it, okay, we're getting an okay, and we see this immediately inside of our app. And so you have to realize kind of the power of what's happening. You have to realize the profoundness of what we are just doing, is that we are sending external requests into our app. We're storing that data, and we're also displaying it inside our app. Now you have to understand, once it's inside Firestore DB, you can pretty much do anything that you want. You have full access to that data. You have full power. And so it's really up to your imagination what you want to do with this data. Now, let me show you a couple of other things. If we go back to Rowi, you see we have 4 rows here. Okay, and what this means is that every time we are sending a new request, it's creating a new row with the data inside that row. So how do you display that data inside Rowi? Well, you can just add a column and call it data, and you can use a field type such as short text because we're displaying text. And now you need a field key. Now remember, the field key here is text. It's a JSON request with a key value. This is key, this is value. Now we want to display this, and so we need to put text here. And so we just put text here, we add, and now we see the data. And now you can do anything that you want. You have the data here, you have the data there, you have data inside Firestore DB, and so you can manipulate the data in any way, shape, or form. Now you may be wondering, well, James, that's all great, but what are the practical implications of this? What are the practical use cases of this? Well, let me show you a couple. Let's say you're building a chatbot, okay? I'm actually building a chatbot here. I started kind of playing with it, and I have a chatbot. Well, guess what? You have something called integrations, and you have something called webhooks. And you can go out and you can create a webhook that's going to integrate with the FlutterFlow app. And I'm actually going to create a tutorial on how to build a chatbot in the future. So if you want to see that, you know what you have to do. Smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know that that is something that's going to interest you. Another thing that you can do is you can use a tool called GetStream, and this allows you to build in-app chat and feeds faster. And if you go into SDKs, you will see all the ways that you can integrate these popular tools with lots of different frameworks and apps. Now, the problem is you do not see FlutterFlow here, and you may be thinking, well, I can't use this nice tool. Now, actually, you can. If you scroll down, you have other REST. You can view that, and this allows you to integrate this tool using webhooks, using REST APIs, basically using the stuff that we talked about. So there's lots and lots of amazing use cases to really take your FlutterFlow or pretty much any other app builder to the next level. So this is very, very important. If you want to build a truly world-class app, maybe you want to build a chatbot, maybe you want to build like a chat app, maybe like a Telegram or like a Signal type app, or you want to build something very, very sophisticated, you can easily do that with Rowi, with webhooks, and other similar functionality that Rowi provides. And so these were just some examples of ways that you can use a tool like Rowi to truly simplify your no-code development. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to be using Rowi from now on for pretty much all my apps, because it's such a great tool. It's a joy to use. I love the UI. I love that it's free. I love that it's open source. It just provides a ton of value. So I'm definitely going to be using this tool in all of my work, in all of my apps. And also I'm going to be sharing with you some of the other ways that you can use this tool to help you in your development. And so if you enjoyed this video and you want to take your no-code knowledge to the next level, you want to build better apps, you want to build smarter apps, you want to build amazing apps and make money with no code, or maybe just learn it for yourself, you definitely want to check out my Patreon page. On my Patreon page, you're going to get access to all the FlutterFlow apps I build, as well as other apps that I build using other app builders. You're going to get access to Q&As, you're going to get access to live streams, and you're also going to get access to my new series called Behind No Code. And this is a series that I just started, and I basically talk about some of the thinking that goes behind me creating these videos, as well as the videos that I created before, videos that I created this week, as well as some of the future videos that I have in mind. And so when you're part of the Patreon, you're part of the awesome community, and you're also going to know some of the things that are going to be happening in the future, and also a great way to support this channel and support my work. So I definitely hope to see you there. And so if you enjoyed this video, you know what you got to do. Smash the like button, leave a comment below if you have any questions or concerns, and I will see you in a future video.